In the second chapter of John's Gospel, we find Jesus and the disciples parting at a wedding reception in Cana. And then Mom shows up. What a bummer. And the news she brings isn't much better. They've run out of wine. Son, do something. Mom, this doesn't have anything to do with me. It's not my party. Well, she doesn't take no for an answer. She tells the servants, do whatever he says to do. Jesus, recognizing she's not going to go away, eyes a number of large water jars used for the Jewish rites of purification. He says, draw from them and take it to the steward. And they do. And the steward, not knowing where the wine has come from, exclaims, wow, this is good stuff. And it's so unusual because usually at occasions like these, the host serves the best wine up front, and when the folks have drunk just a little and got tripsy and, can't figure it out, he starts throwing in the cheap wine. But you've saved the best wine for last. Now we're told that this happens after 3 days. Now, if we assume John's gospel is the church's gospel, the insider gospel, then that little reference should trigger something in us. 3 days? We're talking resurrection stuff. And we point ourselves to the best is yet to come. The heavenly feast, the messianic banquet, that which Isaiah foretold of old, a feast of fat things, of wine pouring out. That's what this is all about. At the beginning, we get clued in. This is going to be a great trip. But then John does something really weird. He spends the rest of his gospel with close encounters of the Jesus kind. We find him in the temple, and he cleans house. We find him meeting Nicodemus, who's searching for the kingdom, and he gets a lesson in baptism. We find a woman at the well who just wants to get her daily chore over, and Jesus gives her living waters. We find a man born blind who probably just wants to see, and Jesus forgives his sins. His good friend Lazarus dies, and his sisters Mary and Martha are very upset. And in the midst of their grief and in the midst of death, Jesus restores Lazarus to life and to community. Even after the resurrection, his encounters are fairly ordinary. He meets Mary in the garden as she prepares to do the things that you normally do following a death. He greets the disciples in the upper room where they are afraid, wondering what next. Will they come for them? Thomas, in the midst of his doubt, is greeted by the signs of the crucifixion. Holy hands and feet, a pierced side. In the midst of his doubt, he believes. And when the disciples decide it's time to go back to life as normal, just to go fishing, he shows up in a miraculous catch of fish. And even Peter, who denied him 3 times, gets a threefold forgiveness and a new call to go feed the sheep. You see, the scandal of this season is that God takes on human form. He becomes like us and greets us in the midst of our normal, daily, mundane lives. In the midst of our routines, in the midst of our crises, in the midst of life and death, in the midst of family and job and school, in the midst of COVIDs and snowstorms. All of the stuff we deal with day in and day out, He is there, bringing us life, giving us what we need to get through the day. Well, some days it doesn't seem to be much. In fact, most days it doesn't even seem to be enough, and yet it is. It's more than enough. You know, it's kind of like those loaves and fishes. So little, and yet enough to get by. Day in and day out, He comes to us, that we might have life and have it abundant. Songs of thankfulness and praise, Jesus, Lord, to Thee we raise, manifested by the star to the sages from afar. Branch of royal David's stem, in Thy birth at Bethlehem, anthems be to Thee addressed, God in flesh made manifest. Manifest at Jordan's stream, prophet, priest, and king supreme, and at Cana wedding guest, in Thy Godhead manifest. Manifest in power divine, changing water into wine. Anthems be to Thee addressed, God in flesh made manifest.